Welcome to PeopleTools Tech Tips. I'm Randy Gronke. This is part 2 of our journey to build Insights dashboards. We're talking about your source data and PSQuery. If you want to code along, you'll need a PeopleSoft HCM development or demo environment with OpenSearch and Insights configured and working. This is not an intro to PSQuery video. This is how to leverage a query to provide the best data for your Insights visualizations. To create visualizations your users demand, you need 4 things from your PSQuery: all the data to use, a drilling URL, a date-time field, and a prompt on that date-time field. And as a note, we're going to use the training data from the PeopleSoft HCM PUM demo for all our episodes, and each episode will build on the previous work. I'm also going to make all the PeopleTools objects we create here available on our website, PeopleToolsTechTips.com, and our GitHub site, PeopleTools Tech Tips. Let's get started. Obviously, we need the critical data from PeopleSoft to create our visualizations. What may not be obvious is that we need to get all the data for the visualization in the query. If the value is not in our query, we won't be able to see it on our visualization. Primary examples are translate values and related display prompts. Insights does not have an ODBC connection back to PeopleSoft to gather related data on demand. I'm going to create our query based on the training table. Add our fields for the visualization. Don't forget the EMPL record number it looks like PeopleSoft might have. Then pull in our interesting course information. We run that and see our data. I see attendance field and a lot of C and other letters, and I don't know what that means. Neither will our users. So let's look at the field list and bring in all our XLAT values where they are available. Bring in either the short or long XLAT value as per what is useful versus real estate cost and visualization. Let's run it again and see the improvements. Save our PSQuery with an informative name. Most PeopleSoft shops use a designated prefix to quickly identify custom objects. Change to public. We need more information. If we have a data table visualization, we'll want the employee's name to display. Add in the name field from names. We still want more data for our visualization. We need the information from the job table. We'll get department ID, EMPL status, and company. Run the query again, we see the new fields. Let's go back to our fields and bring in the XLAT for the EMPL status field. My users may not have the meaning behind all the options memorized. Run that again, we see a much better active in the column instead of just an A. Now let's get to the department description because 13140 may not be useful to most of my users. As always with PSQuery joins, you must make sure that all the correct keys in the join are there. PSQuery often doesn't understand how the key structures really work between tables. Run that now and we see the meaningful department descriptions instead of just the department ID. The overall important point is, if you don't see the data here in your query results, you will not see that data in the Insights visualization. So let's get that data now. Now let's get our last update date time field. In our case, we don't have the last update time field on our record. Many of the more commonly used tables in PeopleSoft do have the last update date time field. Use that if it does. If it doesn't, like our training table here, we have to create it. Go to the Expressions tab, add an expression, type as date time. And we'll use the MetaSQL statement %current date time in. Then use this field. Run that. Every row has the current date time field. We want to do as many calculations in our query as possible before sending it over to OpenSearch. The reason is performance. Yes, Insights does have a scripting language where we do calculations, but that will run for every row, for every user, every time they view a visualization with the calculation. It may not make a difference with such a small data set. It just takes a few milliseconds per row every time. But when we're talking about data sets with hundreds of thousands or millions of rows, those milliseconds start to add up to real delays and dashboard sluggishness for your users. So here in our example, we're going to calculate the course length in days. Since we're working with just dates, every course will be just at least 1 day. Create a new expression, type as number. This is the date difference between the course start date and the course end date, plus 1 day. Use this field, run that, we see our course length in days for every row. The last expression we want to do is to show how we can pre-calculate logic before sending data over to Insights. No, this is not the best example, but the idea is to do as much logic and calculations one time here rather than thousands or more times over in Insights. Create an expression, type as character, and we'll add a case statement that just looks at the company. If GBI, then Y, else N. Use this field. Run, and we see our new field. We need to get decent names for our expression fields. This will pay off once we get our data over to Insights. Edit the fields and use existing PeopleSoft names for the expressions. I'm going to use last update date time for the date time field. For the course length expression, I'm going to use the course duration field. And for the company question, I'll just use a convenient existing field called Company Insider. An important point is to not use a field already in your query, and do not use fields that are similar, such as URL1, URL2, URL3, and so on. So we have our data and our translate values. We have our related fields, and we have our calculated field all working in our query. Next, we need our drilling URL. For our drilling URL, we want to link the employee training detail page here. So add an expression, type as drilling URL. Add the URL type as a component URL. Fill out the portal navigation info. Then fill out our keys. Let's link this EMPL ID and EMPL record number. We don't have those other search fields, so let's see how results are so far. Use this field, update the field properties, and we'll call this URL. Save and test. And we see each line has a drilling URL. But there's our problem. This URL provides the correct key structure to directly access that component. But the first two URLs are identical since they are for the same employee. OpenSearch uses this drilling URL as the key to this document. If more than one row here has the same drilling URL value, each subsequent row sent to OpenSearch will overwrite any current row with that key. The second row will overwrite the first row. So we need to do something to make each of these drilling URLs unique. Let's go back to that drilling URL expression and add more keys. We're going to add the entire key structure of that training table to ensure unique values. Run the query, and let's look at our drilling URL. We see that each row now has a unique URL because of the training table key structure. And here's a cool thing about PeopleTools. The URL still works because the panel processor is just going to ignore any keys that are not part of the component search record. We see click on the URL takes us directly to the target component for that employee. We need a prompt on our date time field for this to be a proper Insights query. The search objects will use the prompt for the incremental updates. We'll discuss that in a later video in this series. Add a prompt to our date time field. Condition type is not less than. Prompts, new prompts. I like to add the field name as last update date time. Save and run. Put in a date time and we see our data. We now have our query for Insights. We have the data we need. We have brought in the translate values. We brought in extra fields to enrich that data set. We have our last update time field. We have our derived fields performing our calculations and logic. And we have our drilling rail that is unique to each row. And we have our prompts and our data set generates. We have the PSQuery to extract data for our visualizations from PeopleSoft. In our next video, we'll define our search definition and deploy it to OpenSearch. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to our channel, and we'll see you next time here on PeopleTools Tech Tips.